Hello, and today we've got former Scottish referee Crawford Allan. Hiya Crawford, how are you doing today?
Hi Angus, fine, thank you, good.
So, let's start. What's your first memory of playing football?
Playing, probably school football, primary school, and primary five or primary six, and then into high school, and a little bit of youth football after that.
Did you enjoy playing? Like, which clubs did you play for?
Yeah, so I played primarily for the school football teams, and then there was a local youth team in the area where I live that was set up. So I played for the local youth team, and they were in the local youth leagues in and around the Edinburgh area. So I played with them, but to be honest, I then found that I had the lure of a paper round and money came in, and that took over a little bit, and I couldn't commit. So I tended to stick to school football after that, to be honest.
What position did you play?
I was usually, when I was a kid, I played right wing, and then moved back a little bit into right midfield and then centre midfield sort of thing. So I played every position really except goalkeeper because I wasn't the tallest, or centre half. But usually up front, midfield, and then in the latter days, I did play kind of fullback and overlapping fullback until the legs gave in.
So, when was the first time you realised you wanted to become a referee?
Um, I was helping out with a local boys' brigade company, a youth group up at the local church, and they had a league where I played in as a boy, and then when I became a helper and then an officer, they played and sometimes didn't get referees for the games, and we just used to put on our tracksuit top and referee the game. And there was a guy at my work who had just left school and had played for my work for 2 or 3 years because we had a football team as well, and he was a referee. So it was a good few years actually. It was about 23, 24 I was when I went and eventually did the referee exam, but it wasn't really with any inclination towards helping or getting to any of the higher levels of football. It was just to help out, and so a referee could referee the under 12s team that I used to help run.
So, how long did it take you to go from like the bottom, like, and get all the way to the top leagues and the professional leagues?
You start at in those days I was category 5 referee. It took me uh, 6 years to reach to be an assistant referee. Um, so I was 3 years in the local youth leagues, refereeing under 14s, then under 16s, and then under 18s and 21s. And that was 3 years over 3 seasons. I then did 2 seasons refereeing junior football. And after 2 years of refereeing junior football, I then got promoted to be an assistant referee in the Football League, the Scottish Football League. And that lasted for 4 years, albeit you do get a jump up halfway through it because you go from being the far side assistant referee to the near side assistant referee because you've got the technical areas to handle as well. And then, so that from starting the journey and passing my referee exam to my first professional league game as a referee in the middle was 11 years. It took me. Could do a little bit quicker nowadays, but that was a while.
Long time. So, what was the first professional refereeing game you ref?
It was down at Gretna. So Gretna had just got into the leagues, and my first game as a referee was Gretna versus Albion Rovers down at Gretna, and that was the first time in the middle as a Category 1 referee. The game ended 0-0, I remember that. I didn't have any yellow cards, any cautions, and I thought, what's the problem? This is easy.
What was the first ever red card you gave someone?
Oh, the red card. Honestly, I can't remember the first red card. I remember my first yellow card. That was my very first game that I refereed, and that was in the Edinburgh under 14s leagues. That was Edinburgh. That was Edina Hibs. We're playing Musselburgh, And I remember the first yellow card because I was a bit nervous, and I went through the proper process and asked the player for his full name and that he would be reported to the association and that he had committed whatever crime he had committed. And it was an Italian name, and I had to get him to spell it to me because it was so long. So that was my first yellow card. But I think it was a while before the first red. Thankfully, I didn't have all that many, but yeah, you got to do it. You got to do it.
What about professionally? What was your first red card?
Professionally, probably in the first teams, that would have come that same season as the Gretna Albion Rovers game. Again, I tend not to remember individual, first red cards or first from a disciplinary perspective. Because before that, you'd come through and you'd done quite a few, like semi-professional games, so the junior football, and they all kind of merged in. I do remember I refereed, my earliest red card was probably after about 5 or 6 minutes in a game, and it happened a couple of times, where I was refereeing a junior cup semi-final down in Ayrshire. There was about 10,000 at this game, and I do remember a player went up for a header and basically elbowed the opposition in the face, and it was a clear red card. So they're relatively the easier ones. But I do also remember sending a player off after about 4 or 5 minutes in another junior game at Bo'ness. And this was to the opposition captain, who shouted very, very loudly so the whole ground heard what he said to me. And it was one of those I just couldn't ignore it because it was directly at me. And that was quite an early red card. That was probably my earliest red card in a game.
So what is the best game you've refereed?
There's been lots of bests because there's so many memories from all the years that I refereed. I was lucky enough to do. It's funny because as a referee, you referee at some of the games and you think that was best for me. Maybe it wasn't best for the crowd or best for. So I was lucky to referee the Scottish Junior Cup final. That was my first big live game on television. So that was a first best in terms of that. I was fortunate to referee lots of live TV Premiership games, and I remember some crackers. I remember doing, I think it was a Dundee United Aberdeen game, and there was quite a few goals in it. That was a good game. And then in Europe, the best games were walking out and then with the Champions League music, and when that plays, you definitely get the hairs in the back of the neck going up. And I was very, very fortunate to do, I think it was 21 Champions League, Europa League, international type matches over about 5 seasons. So you got about 4 or 5 of them a season on the 4 or 5 years that I was operating at that level. And you get to referee some of the best players ever in your time era. So that was a few bests. That was good fun.
You mentioned it just then, the best players. So who was the best player you refereed?
I was lucky enough to be involved in Champions League, so you've had many players from Michael Ballack was a player when I was the refereeing. He was with Schalke at the time, I remember. I remember having Raul, who again had moved to Schalke from Real Madrid at the time. And another time when I did have Real Madrid, then you had Ronaldo on the pitch, and seeing the speeds of his feet and his movement was quite something, until you see it on television and you think it truly is, he's a great player. I did get appointed to a match once at Barcelona, but then had to come off the game for a couple of reasons. So I didn't actually get on the same pitch as Messi, but I was appointed to the game. I just didn't get on the pitch. So those on the pitch, when I was a member of the refereeing teams in the Champions Leagues, there was many players, from the greats in PSG and Real Madrid and Ajax and Inter Milan. I did Inter Milan over in Moscow. I was the fourth official in a game there, and Figo, who had recently retired, was the assistant coach for Inter Milan. So it was good. But being fourth official, you were quite close to technical areas, so you had to manage them. And I do remember having to tell Figo, he jumped up at one point and started to shout
Yeah.
something, wasn't all that friendly. And I didn't actually even open my mouth. I just looked at him and I just went and I pointed to the technical area and he sat down and I thought, that's quite good. I just told Figo to sit down. So,
what
but it's been great. It's been good.
What's the best stadium you've refereed in?
I love Gelsenkirchen in Germany, which is the home of Schalke. In fact, my mouse mat, I can show you here. You get little gifts sometimes. So that's the stadium there. And
Yeah.
so this pitch here rolls out and it comes out underneath this end here. And the top picture is actually the pitch. And it rolls in underneath here so
Yeah.
that during the game it's in. And then when there's no game, the pitch goes in rollers outside so that the grass can grow. And the roof on the stadium, it's an enclosed stadium. And the atmosphere, I was lucky enough to be there twice. And both times the atmosphere was fantastic. I think it was used for the World Cup in Germany a few years ago. I think England played there in the quarterfinals. So that's the best atmosphere I've had on an inside stadium. So that's probably the most modern best stadium that I've been in. Although I've been in many, it's been great.
What was the last game you refereed?
The last game was Scottish Premier Football, and it was Hamilton versus Dundee, and it was in May 2017, so just 3 years ago. And it was quite a tough, potentially tough game, because both teams could still at that point on that day get relegated. As it happened on that day, neither of them got relegated. Inverness were playing at the same time and they got beaten, so they ended up bottom of the league that day. And that was my final game, and blowing the whistle on. That's the last official game. I did a couple of closed doors and challenge games and charity matches after that, but my last Premier game was that.
What is the worst decision you've ever made on a football pitch?
Well, fans would tell me there's been too many. There's ones that, funnily enough, not big games, the big matches that stick out, because you give it the decision as you see it at the time, and if it's proven wrong, then what we tend to look at is what could we do differently as a referee. It's a bit like players. What would you do differently next time to improve your game? And I think it's Pierluigi Collina, ex-referee, in his book, he actually says, if you've given it with the best of intentions from the best angle you've got, at that point in time, it wasn't the worst decision because you gave it honestly and you gave it as you saw it. But I do remember, it was funny, there was one where I was refereeing in Edinburgh across a schools game when I'm still learning and still developing, and there's no assistant referees, I was on my own. And I gave offside because this attacker was clearly offside. He was 10 metres offside. And then the attacker, when I blew my whistle, stopped, looked at me, and he pointed towards the goals and he went, "What about him over there?" And there was a defender who I hadn't noticed play had gone away up over the halfway line to the team and it was coming back again. So the goalkeeper clearly in his penalty area, so that's one defender. And from my view, the next defence was the defensive line away up near the centre circle because the ball got played over the top. But for some unknown reason, a defender had stopped back to talk to his goalkeeper and hadn't come out with all the other defenders. So I was clearly wrong. So I had to stop the game and admit that was a really bad decision, and I had to restart the game with a drop ball to restart it. So that was it's funny, it's years and years and years ago, and it sticks out. But yeah, I remember there's lots of 50-50s. You give a penalty in the Premier League, you don't give a penalty. I remember I was refereeing Rangers Hearts at Ibrox, and I gave Hearts a penalty, and then 2 minutes later there was a penalty claim at the other end for Rangers, which at the time, from my angle, was 50-50 at best, and I didn't give it. And of course that upset the Rangers management, and they felt that was a bad decision at the time. But I've still watched it back on telly, and it could have been, could not have been. So I don't think that was my worst one, but it's funny. It's how they kind of stick out.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
There's a little phrase we use in the refereeing world, and it's to control the controllable. And by that I mean things like your fitness, your attitude, your appearance, your overall professional approach, as all within your gift to manage and to control. And there's only one person's fault if you turn up at a game unfit or not in the right shape, or you've got, you're not portraying a professional attitude, and that person is you. So there's enough stuff that's not in your control that's on the pitch during a game that makes it a real challenge as a referee. And so the best piece of advice was control all the things that are absolutely, and then you don't have to worry about them.
Mm-hmm.
Things on the pitch are then the things that you can work on around your positioning, your whistling technique, your man management, your communication with players. And therefore, by taking away all this element of what you need to concentrate on and allowing you to concentrate on the things that could go wrong, it just makes it a heck of a lot easier. And I say that to a lot of young referees. Get out there with the right attitude, the right approach, the right look, the right behaviour, get your administration right, do all of that, and then worry, you have less to worry about. And then it's just about being resilient and, taking the knocks on the chin when they're due and getting up and doing it again.
And just finally, when was the last time you had to pay for a ticket to go to a football match?
The last time I paid for a ticket. The fact I've got to think about that is probably a bit of a challenge. Probably, actually, see, you've got a Man United top on, so I think probably one of the last times I paid for a ticket was when my ex-refereeing colleague and friend offered me, there was a ticket at Old Trafford, and I gave him money for the ticket, and that was probably a few years ago, but that was a bit of a one-off. So I don't really, it's funny, because I go to a lot now as an observer, as a referee coach and observer, we get to go to the game we're allocated to, and we get a ticket for that game. And because I'm now employed with the Scottish FA as the head of refereeing, then if there is a home Scotland International, which is where I work, then it's my office. So, we get to go to those games. So I did pay to go to Scotland games before, so that was probably the last time as a fan I paid to go in to watch a football game. And I definitely paid, I was very lucky, it was a long, long time ago, and it was the Champions League final at Hampden when Zidane scored. I paid for it. I got a ticket through the refereeing for that, but I had to pay for it. I had to order it and pay for it. So in Scotland, I tend to go to games that I get officially appointed to, so I tend not to have to pay for them. But anything outside of the role, then whether it be to go and watch Scotland away, watch a European game now, or go down south, then that's still, I'm just got to pay for that.
Right, Crawford, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you very much.
Good stuff and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.